hate this thing popping up.
The flu season is upon us. Which type will we worry about this year? And what kind of shots will we be told to take? Remember the swine flu scare of 1976? That was the year the U.S. government told us all that swine flu could turn out to be a killer that could spread across the nation. And Washington decided that every man, woman, and child in the nation should get a shot to prevent a nationwide outbreak, a pandemic. Well, 46 million of us obediently took the shot.
Every man, woman, and child. Don't this sound familiar? I think so. Yep, it is.
And now 4,000 Americans are claiming damages from Uncle Sam amounting to $3.5 billion because of what happened when they took that shot. By far the greatest number of the claims, 2/3 of them, are for neurological damage or even death, allegedly triggered by the flu shot. We pick up the story back in 1976 when the threat posed by the swine flu virus seemed very real indeed.
This virus was the cause of a pandemic in 1918 and 1919 that resulted in over 500,000 deaths in the United States, as well as 20 million deaths around the world.
See how easy it is to...
Thus, the U.S. government's publicity machine was cranked into action to urge all America to protect itself against the swine flu menace.
Influenza is serious business. During major flu epidemics, millions of people are sick and thousands die. Well, this year you can get protection. The vaccines are safe, easy to take, and they can protect you against flu. So roll up your sleeve. Protect
That show giving vaccines mighty quick in the background.
yourself.
One of those who did roll up her sleeve was Judy Roberts. She was perfectly healthy, an active woman, when in November of 1976, she took her shot. 2 weeks later, she says, she began to feel a numbness starting up her legs.
I joked about it at that time. I said I'll be numb to the knees by Friday if this keeps up. By the following week, I was totally paralyzed.
So completely paralyzed, in fact, that they had to operate on her to enable her to breathe. And for 6 months, Judy Roberts was a quadriplegic.
Wow. Are y'all not seeing this? Okay, this is the shit I be telling y'all. This is shit I be telling y'all. And y'all still hearing people, don't look back in the past, don't live in the past. Bitch, maybe you should look back in the past, because motherfucking, if you would have knew this shit, you would have known not to take the motherfucking vaccine, okay? Same shit. What did they do? Put a trach on her. You see the little cut on the neck? I wish I had a more clear video of this, y'all guys, but I don't know, it's kind of grainy, it's old, so what it is.
Diagnosis? A neurological disorder called Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS for short. These neurological diseases are little understood. They affect people in different ways. As you can see in these home movies taken by a friend, Judy Roberts' paralysis confined her mostly to a wheelchair for over a year. But this disease can even kill. Indeed, there are 300 claims.
In a wheelchair for over a year. Okay. Do y'all see Wendy Williams? She can't even do no talk show no more.
Now pending from the families of GBS victims who died, allegedly as a result of the swine flu shot. In other GBS victims
of the swine flu shot. Okay.
The crippling effects diminish and all but disappear. But for Judy Roberts, progress back to good health has been painful and partial.
Now, I noticed that your smile, Judy, is a little bit constricted.
Yes, it is.
Is it different from what it used to be?
Very different. I have a greatly decreased mobility in my lips. And I can't drink through a straw on the right-hand side. I can't blow out birthday candles.
This... So what?
I don't whistle anymore, for which my husband is grateful.
It may be a little difficult for you to answer this question, but have you recovered as much as you are going to recover?
Yes, this is it.
So you will now have a legacy of braces on your legs for the rest of your life?
Yes, the weakness in my hands will stay, and the leg braces will stay.
So Judy Roberts and her husband have filed a claim against the U.S. government. They're asking $12 million, though they don't expect to get nearly that much.
Judy, why did you take the flu shot?
I'd never taken any other flu shots, but I felt like this was going to be a major epidemic. And the only way to prevent it.
A major epidemic. Huh? What they told you? It was a major epidemic. People were dying. It was so needed. You need to take these injections. People are falling dead from left to right, left to right. But the thing about it, you have to go to them to go get tested to see if you had the motherfucking shit. Make that make sense. You had to go to the doctor's office, stick a goddamn swab to see if you had COVID. So how fucking sick is the COVID really? Huh? Maybe it's because it just doesn't fucking exist, people. That's just facts.
A major epidemic of a really deadly variety of flu was for everybody to be immunized.
Where did this so-called deadly variety of flu, where did it first hit back in 1976? It began right here at Fort Dix in New Jersey in January of that year when a number of recruits began to complain of respiratory ailments, something like the common cold. An Army doctor here sent samples of their throat cultures to the New Jersey Public Health Lab to find out just what kind of bug was going around here. One of those samples was from a Private David Lewis who had left his sickbed to go on a forced march. Private Lewis had collapsed on that march, and his sergeant had revived him by mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
He said the sergeant collapsed. Are y'all not seeing these people collapsing? All these teenagers that then got these shots in their parents on the field, on the basketball courts. Shit. Matter of fact, I seen a pastor. He got the shots in his thing. It was let me see if I can find a clip later on, but yeah, passed out right there in the middle of the sermon. Yes, indeed.
But the sergeant showed no signs of illness. A few days later, Private Lewis died.
If this disease is so potentially fatal that it's going to kill a young, healthy man, a middle-aged school teacher doesn't have prayer.
The New Jersey lab identified.
Exactly. So why can't people be more smart? Now, see, this is the difference between the injections, though. Okay, see, the injection she took, it still did the same symptoms, but the only difference is the people who got the fucking COVID shot, they're just out of there. I mean, they can't even have no reason, no thinking for themselves. Like, they're like literally unaware of everything. Because they still be having side effects from the shots, and then go still take your kids up there to go get a shot. Clearly, this shit is fucking some brain cells up. Because who in their right mind would do some shit like that? Bitch, I can't walk and you gonna take your kids up there to go get the shots too? Come on, man. Get real with it.
Identified most of those soldiers' throat cultures as the normal kind of flu virus going around that year, but they could not make out what kind of virus was in the culture from the dead soldier and from 4 others who were sick. So they sent those cultures to the Federal Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia for further study. A few days later, they got the verdict: swine flu. But that much publicized outbreak of swine flu at Fort Dix involved only Private Lewis, who died, and those 4 other soldiers who recovered completely without the swine flu shot.
If I had known.
Bro, did you see that? 5 people. 1 person got the shot, the other 4 healed without it. And the one who got the shot died.
At that time, that the boy had been in a sick bed, got up, went out on a forced march, and then collapsed and died. I would never have taken a shot.
The rationale for our recommendation was not on the basis of the death of a single individual, but it was on the basis that when we do see a change in the characteristics of the influenza virus, it is a massive public health problem in this country.
Dr. David Sencer, then head of the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, is now in private industry.
Oh, what's this? So he's the head of the CDC in Atlanta. Watch his old big googly-eyed ass dude.
He devised the swine flu program, and he pushed it. You began to give flu shots to the American people in October of '76.
October 1st.
By that time, how many cases of swine flu around the world had been reported?
There had been several reported, but none confirmed. There had been cases...
Say what? Say what? Several reported, but none confirmed. The same shit they do it now.
In Australia that were reported by the press, by the news media. There were cases in...
None confirmed. Did you ever uncover any other outbreaks of swine flu anywhere in the world?
No.
Now, nearly everyone was to receive the
He
shot
said
in
no.
a public health facility where a doctor might not be present. Therefore, it was up to the CDC to come up with some kind of official consent form, giving the public all the information it needed about the swine flu shot. This form stated that the swine flu vaccine had been tested. What it didn't say was that after those tests were completed, the scientists developed another vaccine. And that was the one given to most of the 46 million who took the shot. That vaccine was called X53A.
Was X53A?
Are they not doing the same thing now? If you gotta get the first shot, then you gotta get the second shot. Now they on the third booster. Now you on the fourth booster. Are they not doing the same fucking steps now?
Ever field tested?
I can't say. I would have to...
It wasn't.
I don't know.
Well, I would think that you're in charge of the program.
I would have to check...
let me see what he said.
I can't say. I would have to...
3A.
Was X53A ever field tested?
I can't say. I would have to...
It wasn't.
I don't know.
Well, I would think that you're in charge of the program.
I would have to check the records. I haven't looked at this in some time.
The information form, the consent form, was also supposed to warn people about any risks of serious complications following the shot. But did it?
No, I had never heard of any reactions other than a sore arm, fever, this sort of thing.
Judy Roberts' husband, Gene, also took the shot.
Yes, I looked at that document. I signed it. Nothing on there said I was going to have a heart attack or I can get Guillain-Barré, which I never heard of.
What if people from the government, from the Center for Disease Control, what if they had indeed known about it? What would be your feeling?
They should have told us.
Did anyone ever come to you and say, you know something, fellas? There's the possibility of neurological damage if you get into a mass immunization program?
No.
No one ever did?
No.
Do you know Michael Hatwick?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Michael...
No. You are the fucking head of the CDC. No. Let's not forget who the fuck he is. The head of the CDC.
Hatwick directed the surveillance team for the swine flu program at the CDC. His job was to find out what possible complications could arise from taking the shot and to report his findings to those in charge.
Cross-eyed.
Did you know ahead of time, Dr. Hatwick, that there had been case reports of...
Look at, my bad, y'all. Look at this man's eyes. What the fuck? Oh shit, my bad. Okay, I'm gonna let it play.
neurological disorders, neurological illness, apparently associated with the injection of influenza vaccine?
Absolutely.
You did?
Yes.
How'd you know that?
By review of the literature.
So you told your superiors, the men in charge of the swine flu immunization program, about the possibility of neurological disorders.
Stop doing it. I don't ever laugh. What the fuck? He can't look no other way but in the corner. Nigga looking at the ceiling the whole time. I just playing. Shit. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What would you say if I told you that your superiors say that you never told them about the possibility of neurological complications?
That's nonsense. I can't believe that they would say that they did not know that there were neurological illnesses associated with influenza vaccination. That simply is not true. We did know that.
I've said that Dr. Hatwick had never told me of his feelings on this subject.
Then he's lying.
I guess you would have to make that assumption.
Then why does
You
this
would have to make
report
that assumption.
from your own agency, dated July 1976, list neurological complications as a possibility?
I think the consensus of the scientific community was that the evidence relating neurologic disorders to influenza immunization, that they did not feel that this association was a real one.
You didn't feel it was necessary to tell the people that information?
I think that over the years we have tried to inform the American people as fully as possible.
As part of informing Americans about the swine flu threat, Dr. Sensor's CDC also helped create the advertising to get the public to take the shot.
Let me read to you from one of your own agency's memos planning the campaign to urge Americans to take the shot. The swine flu vaccine has been taken by many important persons, he wrote. Example, President Ford, Henry Kissinger, Elton John, Muhammad Ali, Mary Tyler Moore, Rudolph Nureyev, Walter Cronkite, Ralph Nader, Edward Kennedy, etc., etc. True?
See, this is why that's why I say the devil has no new tricks, huh? Are they not doing the same exact thing? Can y'all not see this? This is a script. These motherfuckers is acting it out in real life.
I'm not familiar with that particular piece of paper, but I do know that at least of that group, President Ford did take the vaccination.
Did you talk to these people beforehand to find out if they planned to take the shot?
I did not know.
Did anybody?
I do not know.
Did you get permission to use their names in your campaign?
I do not know.
So how the fuck did you get to be the head of the CDC? Because you apparently you don't know shit. So I don't even know why the fuck you in charge of the CDC then. Because you don't know shit. Right.
Mary, did you take a swine flu shot?
No, I did not.
Did you give them permission to use your name saying that you had or were going to?
Absolutely not. Never did.
Did you ask your own doctor about taking the swine flu shot?
Yes, and at the time he thought it might be a good idea. But I resisted it because I was leery of having the symptoms that sometimes go with that kind of inoculation.
So you didn't?
No, I didn't.
Have you spoken to your doctor since?
Yes.
And?
He's delighted that I didn't take that shot.
You're in charge. Somebody's in charge.
Look. This is crazy, man. This is crazy.
This is your advertising strategy that I have a copy of here.
Who's it signed by?
This one is unsigned. But you'll acknowledge that it was your baby, so to speak.
It could have been from Department of Education and Welfare. It could be from CDC. I don't know.
Right.
I'll be happy to take responsibility for it.
It's been 3 years now since you fell ill with GBS, right?
Right.
Has the federal government, in your estimation, played fair with you about your claim?
No, I don't think so. It seems to be dragging on and on and on. And really, no end in sight that I can see at this point.
With respect to the cases of Guillain-Barré, allegedly...
Former Secretary of HEW Joseph Califano, too, was disturbed that there was no end in sight. So a year and a half ago, he promised that Uncle Sam would cut the bureaucracy.
Oh, don't that sound familiar? No end in sight? Huh. Don't that sound familiar? Push through the fucking media? Don't that sound?
Crazy. Red tape for victims suffering from GBS and would pay up quickly.
We shouldn't hold them to an impossible or too difficult standard of proving that they were hurt. Even if we pay a few people a few $1,000s that might not have deserved it, I think justice requires that we promptly pay those people who do deserve it.
Who's making the decision to be so hard-nosed about settling?
Well, I assume the Justice Department is.
Griffin Bell before he left?
Well, the Justice Department agreed to the statement I made. It was cleared word for word with the lawyers in the Justice Department by my HEW lawyers.
And that statement said, in effect?
That statement said that we should pay Guillain-Barré claims without regard to whether the federal government was negligent if they resulted from the swine flu shot.
I think the government knows it's wrong.
If it drags out long enough, that people will just give up. let it go.
I am a little more adamant in my thoughts than my wife is, because I told Judy to take the shot. She wasn't going to take it, and she never had shots. And I'm mad with my government because they knew the facts, but they didn't release those facts because if they had released them, the people wouldn't have taken. And they can come out tomorrow and tell me there's going to be an epidemic, and they can drop off like flies next to me. I will not take another shot that my government tells me to take.
Now, why can't people over here be like that? So if he's sitting up here telling you he ain't gonna take another shot that the federal government will make if there were, I don't give a fuck if there's a pandemic or what, but yet y'all motherfuckers still taking y'all kids to get the shots.
Meantime, Judy Roberts and some 4,000 others like her are still waiting for their day in court.
I don't need another flu shot.
Okay, y'all, these are the news clippings of the the swine vaccine.
I had a flu shot last year.
A swine flu epidemic may be coming.
Swine flu shot? Well, I don't know. I've been thinking about it.
It could make you very sick.
Swine flu? Man, I'm too fast for that to catch me.
You'll want to be protected.
I'm the healthiest 55-year-old you ever seen. Hey, I play golf every weekend.
Get a shot of protection. The swine flu shot.
Joe brought it home from the office. He gave it to Betty and one of his kids, and to Betty's mother. But Betty's mother went back to California the next day. On her way to the airport, she gave it to a cab driver, a ticket agent, and one of the charming stewardesses. At school, Joe's kid gave it to some other kids, and Mrs. Merrill got it and gave it to her husband. In California, Betty's mother gave it to her best friend, Dottie. But Dottie had a heart condition and she died. But before she...
What? We talking about the flu here, people. She's saying Betty had a heart condition and she died. Did y'all not catch what the flu? Y'all didn't hear that?
She died. Dottie gave it to her, and one of the charming stewardesses. At school, Joe's kid gave it to some other kids, and Mrs. Merrill got it and gave it to her husband. In California, Betty's mother gave it to her best friend, Dottie. But Dottie had a heart condition and she died. But before she died, Dottie gave it to her girlfriend, the mailman, the paper boy, and the vet when she went to pick up her chihuahua.
If a swine flu epidemic comes, this is how it could spread. You'll want to be protected, especially if you're elderly or chronically ill. Get a shot of protection.
Especially if you're elderly. My gosh, people. And y'all still think this shit. Y'all still think these people ain't said y'all. I just can't. Look, get a shot of protection. The swine flu shot. Get a shot of protection.
The swine flu shot.
See, this is bullshit I be talking about. These people be on. This is bullshit. But hold on. Let me find. I have another one I want to see.
It is not.
Nope.
No, they didn't isolate the virus. That's the issue.
Well, you isolate a virus by
Clearly, logic and common sense dictate that if you have not isolated the thing you are looking for, there is no possible way to determine what the thing is made of or what it alone does.
You may be interested to know that the prize for providing the proof of isolation and genetic content for SARS-CoV-2 has jackpotted up to €1 million.
We make it clear we're not just asking for something maybe where you yourself isolated. We're saying any record of it being isolated anywhere in the world by anyone, and they have nothing.
They can't find it. They ain't did it.
Institutions indicated the same, that they had searched the records and located none describing legitimate isolation of any SARS-CoV-2 patient sample performed by anyone, anywhere on the planet, ever. actually existed, should this information not be at their fingertips?
This is the entire gig right here. If these are not pathogens, then why are we putting masks on? And why are we social distancing?
I come from a scientific and medical background, so I'm able to read the literature and understand what things are what. And so I started looking at the articles where they say that they've discovered a novel coronavirus. And what I uncovered is that they put forth this experimental criteria that proves the existence of a virus, but when you take a closer look, it's actually the experiment itself that gives them the proof they need, even if you don't even have any source of a virus in the experiment at all. And this was actually carried out recently by Dr. Stefan Lanka in Germany, who showed that he got the same proof of a virus by doing the experiment without any source of a virus whatsoever.
The dying of cells in the test tube we can create in the same manner without infected material. And then they're calling their dying cell tissues an isolate, which then they offer on the market for 2,000 euros. And then they say, and in here, and this is the virus, and from that we can create a vaccine now.
My co-author, Torsten Engelbrecht, made a point of contacting those authors who had claimed to have first identified or isolated the purported virus to see if they had purified samples. We published our findings in the recently released updated version of Virusmania, and as many of you will know, none of the study authors claimed to have obtained the virus in purified form.
The most important paper written on the COVID-19 situation by Christian Drosten and others on where he got the genome or where he got the PCR segments that they're using in their tests. And he says, and I'm quoting here, "We aim to develop and deploy robust diagnostic methodology for use in public."
Okay, I'm glad he remembered that so I can write it down. The PCR test, the test. I'm gonna show you a video of that. I'll probably put this on the next one. Cause I got that too. Yep. Let me put it down so I can show you the man who created the fucking test and stuff. Okay, the PCR test.
Public health laboratory settings without having virus material available. Now, I don't know how much clearer they can make it that they never actually had possession of a virus. They never had possession of a genome.
A CDC document titled Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2 from Patient with Coronavirus Disease, United States, describes the process of what they call isolation of the COVID virus. The process starts with a swab taken from a male Chinese patient in Washington, D.C. in January of 2020.
They did this in a way where they had basically fragments of genetic material from whatever would be in someone's lungs who was sick, which would be a lot of different things. And there turns out that there's like 56 million individual little fragments of RNA, and they sequence those, and we don't know where any of those individual fragments are from because we didn't get it from a virus.
After acquiring the sample, substances were added to the mix. Among the substances added to the unpurified sample were vero cells, which are kidney cells from a green monkey. They also added human liver cancer.
Yeah. And this is why y'all folks, when I first told y'all I was in the vaccine, and you said, that's not it. And I said, all you gotta do is go look it up. See? You don't know what they are. They use all these other different names for them. I told you, go look up what it is and go type it in on Google. It'll pop right up to tell you what the fuck you're talking about. Okay? I told y'all that. Dead baby fetus cells, all of that. And you wonder why motherfuckers got monkeypox coming out. Talking about monkeypox.
Cells, human embryonic kidney cells, human lung cancer cells, and fetal bovine serum. The mixture was then put into an incubator and later tested for.
Let's just say everything they put in that vaccine was dead. Huh? So what the fuck you think it's gonna do to your body?
Cell damage. This cell damage they call a cytopathic effect and is assumed to be caused by the presence of a virus. It turns out that the only cells which were damaged were the viro cells, or the monkey cells. None of the human cell lines showed the cytopathic effects. In other words, only monkey kidney cells grew the virus. But as
only in motherfucking animals.
Dr. Lonka had discovered, no swab sample was required to produce the same cytopathic effects, just this witch's brew of substances added in the CDC's experiment. Next, they took samples from the damaged cell culture, enough, they say, to span the genome of the virus. But the genome at this point had not been mapped, so how did they know its length? Enter GenBank, a reference library of all known viral genomes.
So they pull out these sequences, and then of course they're not a continuous sequence. So how do
I don't know what would make these people think no doctors was gonna check this. No doctors would have y'all have this system, basically the same thing that police have. You know, wherever you go, the fucking system, right? What make you think they weren't gonna know? And how did they get fucking away with this for so long? Why are they still getting away? Oh, let's think about that. Oh, they're the government, that's why. Yeah. Nigga, we at war, okay? We are at fucking war. I advise y'all motherfuckers not even go to the goddamn doctor. None of that. Stay away from large crowds, all of that. Because they got so much shit they've been using on y'all motherfuckers today. It was unreal. And I'm gonna bring out some of them bioweapons they've been using too.
you piece them together? So basically a computer runs for several days trying to piece these things together in some theoretical framework that fits the parameters of whoever set up the operation. So they say, oh, well, it's going to have a spike protein and it's going to be at this point. So then the computer fills in sequences, who knows where they're from, that were from, you know, somebody's snot. And then when there's missing gaps, the computer just makes it up. Like they may pull it from something in a database from another virus or just generate it based on a pattern recognition algorithm, right? So essentially it's just a theoretical model, and sometimes it's even referred to in the literature as an in silico model, right? Meaning that it's made in a computer on circuitry. It's not a real genome of a real organism. And anyone that, you know, purports it to be, they should...
It's not real, folks. Did you just hear this? This is information.
Just simply look at the methods, and this is roughly called next generation sequencing.
When the computers had rendered their results, the data was, quote, interpreted manually, or more commonly using qualitative software by suitably trained interpreters. In other words, a panel and a computer tweak the final results. Let's recap the CDC's virus isolation procedure. They start with a swab from a person with symptoms. Then they add several toxic substances. Then they observe that monkey cells became damaged. They assume the damage was caused by not just a virus, but a human virus. Then they choose a virus from GenBank that they think it might be similar to. Then they run several computer algorithms to make the data fit that model. A panel of experts tweaks the final result to publish what will come to be known as the SARS-CoV-2 Complete Genome.
I started submitting Freedom of Information requests to Health Canada and other Canadian institutions to see if they had any evidence of real SARS-CoV-2 isolation. My requests were specifically worded to weed out the papers that I claimed to have isolated, but in fact performed what I call fraudulent monkey business. So far, the following Canadian institutions have responded: Health Canada, National Research Council of Canada, the Vaccine and Infectious Disease Organization - International Vaccine Center at the University of Saskatchewan, which had claimed to have isolated the virus. McGill University, the region of Peel, where I used to live, the City of Toronto, University of Toronto, Sunnybrook Health Sciences Center, McMaster University, and Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto. Note that researchers from the last 4 of those institutions had already publicly claimed to have jointly isolated the virus, and at least 2 of them are involved in COVID-19 vaccine development.
Now, if we go back to our dictionary definition of isolate, which is to obtain a substance or microorganism in an uncombined or pure state, we can see that people are confused, or at least talking about very different things, because nobody has produced an uncombined or pure state sample. Other investigators were also aware of the inconsistent ways in which isolation was being used. Here in New Zealand, the media reported in mid-2020 that Professor Quinone Matteau of Otago University was able to grow the SARS-CoV-2 virus and isolate its RNA, its genetic material. However, Canadian researcher Christine Massey and New Zealander Michael S. have been submitting Freedom of Information requests to health institutions around the world. When they made an Official Information Act request to Otago University, they were advised that the university, in fact, had no records of any study describing the actual purification of the alleged virus. Okay, it's time to get some more lessons from Professor Racaniello to see if a representative from the orthodoxy can tidy up their mess. He says, an isolate is a virus that we have isolated from an infected host, and we have propagated that in culture. You put that sample in cells and culture, which is how we grow viruses. And you grow virus, and now you have an isolate. All right, I think we might have hit some major problems here. He's implying that someone spits in a cup, and if you mix it with a cell culture, hey presto, we've isolated a virus. That doesn't sound like isolation at all, because we're dealing with samples and culture mediums that contain all kinds of substances, without any mention of purification. With regards to this, in Virus Mania, we quote Nobel laureate virologist Françoise Barré-Sinoussi as saying, you have to purify the virus from all this mess. Professor Racaniello goes on to say that most of the time we take this nasopharyngeal swab in the solution, we just do the genome sequence, and we don't actually have a physical isolate virus, and that's very important. Okay, so that's a big concession. He admits many of these so-called isolates are simply detecting genetic sequences from crude clinical specimens. Unfortunately, Professor Racaniello's discipline for terms really seems to fall apart when he goes on to say, this is a phylogenetic tree of 4,000 or so genome sequences of SARS-CoV-2 isolates. But then he goes on to recover from this slip and state that the dots are individual genome sequences which may or may not have an isolate associated with them. But can you see the major problem here? Detecting nucleic acid sequences does not equate to proof of a virus. In fact, the professor said so himself in his 2017 blog. Many laboratories choose to assay the presence of viral genomes by PCR. This is an acceptable technique as long as the limitations are understood. It detects nucleic acids, not infectious virus. However, even with the professor's stricter definition of isolate, that of a culture mixture, he's still not referring to a purified specimen.
The central question is, how does any scientist, any virologist, prove that a, quote, new virus is the cause of any illness? The answer is surprisingly clear and straightforward. It also mimics how any normal human being proves the causation of anything. The first thing one does is to find a number of people who seem to suffer from the illness in question. This could be COVID-19, AIDS, Hep C, or any other illness. Then, using standard and common virological isolation and purification techniques that have been in common use in every virology lab for decades. One would isolate the virus from every other substance in the blood, sputum, or tissues of the affected person or animal. Using electron microscopy, one then shows the world the pure isolated particles called viruses from each of these people. All of the viruses should look identical. The next step would be to analyze the genetic material of these identical particles using commonly available computerized genetic sequencing tools, which have also been available for decades. These sequences should also be identical from one particle to the next. Finally, these isolated, purified, photographed, and sequenced viruses would then be introduced onto test animals along with rigorous and appropriate controls to see whether the test animals develop the identical illness that the original subjects had. Then and only then, once these steps have been performed, can we say with confidence that this new virus is the likely cause of this new illness. During this past year, I have spent countless hours looking for evidence that these simple steps were done for the illness called COVID-19 and that the virus called SARS-CoV-2 was properly isolated and characterized. To my shock and surprise, neither I nor anyone else I know looking into this issue has yet to find a single published study that even attempted to perform these simple and doable experiments. As shocking as this may be to hear, I now ask that if you dispute this, please make available the paper or papers that successfully did these simple experiments.
So have particles that can only be seen on an electron microscope, been isolated in any context? And I would say yes. So they have found particles called bacteriophages that live in bacterial cultures in a pure culture in laboratory conditions. And also they have found particles of that size in other lower organisms like sea algae. And I think they call those giant viruses, actually. And those particles are quite interesting, and I would encourage you, I wish I had thought of this before, to find some photographs of the microscopic images of these particles, because they have very, very distinctive geometric forms. They don't just look like a round blob like the pictures of the alleged viruses that cause disease.
We also have a communication from the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which is Anthony Fauci's institute, indicating that the electron microscope images that they've published did not involve isolation of any virus.
I'll read you what Pfizer says about their mRNA vaccine. Quote, "The DNA template used does not come directly from an isolated virus from an infected person." Here's another quote. "The DNA template, SARS-CoV-2, gene bank, etc., was generated via a combination of gene synthesis and recombinant DNA technology." So if this is a hoax, that Pfizer doesn't have the virus as their template, then apparently Pfizer is in on the hoax.
The casual reader, like a typical doctor who would, see articles and curated by some organization like WebMD, they would just see the titles of the article and they would think that the virus really was separated and isolated according to the definition of the word isolate that they know. However, that's been completely obfuscated in these papers by coming up with this false definition of isolation, which really means to grow a toxic cell culture and then show cell damage.
We have taken a major step for freedom by coming here today. We need to continue our efforts. We need to be prepared for
So that's one of my people. Y'all motherfuckers need to wake up and realize, oh, Until next video. Shit, you can't even stop that. Yeah.